Hey there, welcome back to the Lion and the Liverbird podcast after a brief hiatus. Rohit's back in the US and he's still here in India. And we need to talk about the chaos at Chelsea. I think that's a very good nickname for Chelsea. Chaos Chelsea should be the nickname of the club now. Liam Rosenior has been sacked. Enzo Maresca was sacked. I don't think they'll be making the Champions League. What's gone so terribly wrong for a club that just won the Club World Cup, I think, a couple of years ago? They were looking good. Enzo Maresca was apparently the heir to Pep Guardiola. Rohit's done a lot of extensive research on this, and we've broken this actually down into five tiers of collapse. It's like Dante's Inferno, the seven stages of hell, or something like that. We've got the five stages of Chelsea's collapse. We'll start off with the boardroom, but do stick around for the fifth and the final point because that's a really interesting one. And a lot of times that's not discussed, that angle. So, Rohit, let's start off. The first point which you've shared is like the red flags right at the very top.
So I think the starting off with the boardroom, the number one thing is the civil war at the very top, right? It's been Boli versus Iqbali for a number of years now. It's a power struggle that's left the club without a unified vision.
Mhm.
And as a result, number two is the structural instability. If your parents are fighting, right, the entire organization basically is unstable. It creates a toxic environment, right? Who do you report to? Number three is when these owners came in, they had a huge amount of cultural arrogance. They came in and were dismissive about traditional European sports, about scouting, right? Number four is they had an over reliance on data. Like there are multiple instances where these guys come out and say that the data at Chelsea is not good, the data at European football is not good, and they've been very dismissive about everything else that's not data. And finally, the fifth point is institutional memory loss. They've come in and gutted the Chelsea organization, removing anybody who had any experience in this field, not just in the men's field, but also in the youth team and the women's team as well. So, out of these five, what do you think is the worst crime?
I think the fifth point that you said, the institutional memory loss, is a big one because I think Marina Grovsky was part of the team and Petr Cech, I'm not sure, was he there? Wasn't there?
Yes,
He was there
yeah,
and they were let go. But it's
yeah.
very interesting you put out this part of the cultural arrogance because these guys are businessmen. But surely they would have known, right, what they're getting into. Like I know they're Americans, and at least Todd Bowley is American, and we've discussed this. American sport, American leagues, brands, what they call them franchises, are not the same as European football or football leagues in general. So I find that to be quite interesting that how learned people could actually make this kind of a mistake.
So here is what my point of view there, right? They are successful people, they are rich people, but I would argue that they are not learned in the sense of, they don't have any experience in like soccer, European football, soccer, right? Iqbali, there's a video going around, people should go on and check that. He's talking in an interview dismissively and derisively about a top sporting director at a top three club, saying that, the data that he uses is his eyes, right? So he's basically saying, I know more than this guy who's been in the sport for 20, 30 years and is a top sporting director because I can look at his spreadsheet, right? Of course, data is important, but you cannot ignore institutional knowledge. Okay, Adeem, moving on. Second section is, I think we'll talk about the sporting directors, right? Because I think they are equally culpable. You could probably take a little bit of blame away because, they're working under these directors. But I'll talk about 5 points why the sporting directors are culpable for the situation we're in, right? There's a big pedigree gap, number one, right? We got Winstanley, Stewart, and Shields from Brighton, Monaco, and Southampton, but they've never led a top team. They've never been the sporting director guiding a top team. The second thing here is these sporting directors don't seem to understand that there's a human element to creating any team. There is experience element. You can't just put together youngsters and expect them to perform. You need leadership, proven leadership. The third point is the pure profit obsession, right? They've been selling homegrown players for profits. They've been selling players who they've bought for a small price just so that they can make some profit. Basically, that leads to squad imbalance, right? And the squad imbalance is also horrible. We have like 20 left wingers. We don't have a good striker. We don't have a good goalkeeper. And finally, all of this is being based off of spreadsheet scouting, right? All of this, they've replaced, traditional scouting mostly from what it seems like, and only using data. A good example for that is Garnacho. So out of these, Adim, what do you think is the worst?
I think it's the pure profit obsession. I know you pulled out the point about getting people in from smaller clubs, but we've seen them actually work out in the end. But this, I don't know what is their obsession with selling players and making money all the time. It's not going to help the club in the long run. I just don't understand this logic that they have, balancing the books and
Yeah.
all.
I think that's a very good point, right? They're trying to sell for profit to make money, but for some reason they can't seem to get a front of shirt sponsor that would give them money, right? It's like, why don't you get a front of shirt sponsor instead of selling, these young players from our youth league? We sold Rio and Gomo. I was doing
Hmm.
amazingly well. Not really sold, we couldn't keep hold of him, but basically, get money from situations where you can and not through, player trading. Okay, moving on to the next section, Nadeem. This
I
is the
think this is
coach
interesting.
itself,
Yeah.
right?
We need
Yeah,
to talk
yeah.
about this because we've seen Chelsea have so many coaches over the past 5, 6 years. It's kind of crazy. You've got quality managers in like Thomas Tuchel and Pochettino, and then you just shifted tactics completely. You went down the road to Maresca and then Rossini, and now we don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, the coaching tracks. Just go with it, Rohit. What are the five issues with that?
Yeah, the first thing is what you exactly said, right? The tactical whiplash, the constant churn of these coaches, Tuchel, Potter, Poch, Rosenior, Lampard in the middle, right? The players are confused, the squad is confused. Specifically to Rosenior, this is an internal promotion, the company man, right? Rosenior got hired from Strasbourg with a paper thin CV, and nobody was going to respect him for that, unfortunately. And of course, Chelsea, the pressure is high. It's in the point number three, right? A coach who does not have the experience, the expertise of dealing with that pressure will never be able to handle the heat of the Chelsea hot seat. Number four is the yes man perception, right? When you hire somebody like Rosinia, who's a yes man, you don't get pushback because we've already talked about the sporting directors being wrong in multiple cases. And if you just hire a yes man, things are going to go down the hill. And then finally, they're basically prioritizing synergy with the sporting structure and the coach over excellence, right? Which top manager will come and work for Chelsea under the sporting leadership at all? Nobody. So they'll again try to probably get a yes man who will agree with them. And so that's basically number five. What do you think is the worst here?
I think hiring Rossini, like this entire internal promotion thing, like if he had the chops, right? If he had taken Strasbourg to a Ligue 1 title, had beaten PSG, then it makes sense. Like, fine, give him a shot. But in mid-season, right, he was called in. How is he like? When does he have the time to implement his ideas? I don't understand this logic at all.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? They've basically messed up Rosinho's career as well, right? In a way. So they've already been messing up all these young players' career. Now they've messed up a coach's career, right? Like you hit the nail on the head. Let him win something at least. Let him even qualify for the Champions League with Strasbourg. Then you can, put him into Chelsea. Anyways, next we'll talk about the guys who are actually on the pitch, right? The fundamental flaws in the squad. So I'll again, point out these five major issues with the entire aspect, and then you tell me which is the worst. So point number one is the synergy sacrifice, right? The pure profit that we are driving every day is basically making us sell players like Madueke and Jackson, right? They were just developing synergy with Palmer, and we sold them before they could progress further. Number two is mental fragility. Young squad, right? There's zero battle hardness, and whenever we go down or things don't go our way, everything collapses, and people are actually giving up on the field. And number three is the goalkeeper paradox, right? We have one goalkeeper who's a good shot stopper, but he can't pass. The other goalkeeper can pass, but he cannot cannot stop any shots at all, right? Moving on to the midfield, right? Midfield, we have really good technical players, but guess what? They are all weak. They can't win headers. They're not good physically, right? And Caicedo is being outrun and overrun by everybody else. And then finally, we have a one-dimensional attack, right? We have wingers who can't beat their man. We have strikers who can't score, and Parmer now has fallen off a cliff in terms of his form. So, in terms of all of these issues with the squad, what do you think is the worst or the funniest?
I think the synergy issue is a problem because that affects the team as the most, right? Because you can't, you do, if you don't know what your forward line is going to do when you have the ball, and if you don't know what your defense is going to do when you're tracking back, then obviously the performances will dip all across. So yeah. That's a huge issue.
So, I'd like to point out that, that ties in very well with the spreadsheet concept, right, Adim? So if you don't think that synergy is important, you just go and replace an XG of a player with the XG of a new player, assuming that it's a plug and play. Oh, I removed Madueke. He had X number of goals and assists last year. We'll put in somebody else, Esteval. I mean, at least the data says he'll replace it. But these are human beings in a team. They have to fit in together as a puzzle piece, which these guys don't seem to understand. Okay, I think finally, I'm going to talk about the very bottom of the rung, right? This is something that nobody really talks about, and this is the fans. And I personally feel that the fans do have some culpability in Chelsea's current situation. Okay, so the number one aspect is, we've had a curse of the success that we got during Abramovich's era. That's basically made us, hungry for success every single season, and we have lost our patience, right? The patience gap makes the fans fickle, right? The moment things don't go your way, the fans start booing, the fans turn against these young players, right? And the young players need support, not a toxic greenhouse atmosphere that often exists in Stamford Bridge. So Stamford Bridge is either quiet or it's toxic right now, right? And these young players cannot survive, cannot grow in that environment. Number four is a disconnect with the identity. This is, the fans not feeling connected to the club anymore. And I'm saying this personally, right? It just looks like it's a venture capital firm and not our beloved Chelsea FC anymore. And finally, it's leading to a breaking point with the fans, right? We haven't been able to sell out our FA Cup allotted tickets. Fans just don't want to go to the games. There are protests every day. At least the protest hopefully will bear some fruit. So, Adeem, this fan aspect, do you think, it holds water? Do you think the fans have some culpability in the situation at all?
A bit of the fans, yeah, I think they do because when we saw Chelsea play during our school days and when we grew up, we saw Chelsea winning like crazy. Jose Mourinho was leading titles, winning titles, goes hitting. I think one title, Antonio Conte. We had Avram Grant winning stuff with you guys. So I think the fans have gotten used to getting a trophy or two in. And that's how it all, connects back because Maresca won something, right? And then people will expect that the next manager will do that and so on and so on and so forth. And it's not working out that way. But I understand how it's difficult also for the fans, right? Because they pay a lot of money to watch these games and they don't want to watch draft football. I can let go of results being bad, but if you're playing bad football also along with it and you don't know who your best 11 is, you don't know the players, new manager every 6 months, obviously they're also going to feel a little discontent. So I understand where they're also coming from. But yeah, it's a total madhouse at Chelsea right now. I don't know what other way to explain or understand what's going on there because again these are legitimate businessmen who've made millions and billions. How can they break down a club that is so successful so quickly? It's insane.
Well, we've broken it down right from the top at the board to the fans. Like the listeners, please let us know what do you think among all of this is, the number one and number two reason why Chelsea find themselves in such a deep hole. There is maybe some, light at the end of the tunnel. In firing Rosenior, the Chelsea hierarchy came out and said that they'll take time for self-reflection, right? And think about what they have done wrong and maybe change their approach to transfers and everything else. We don't really know. For now, our coach is Callum McFarlane, and we're facing Leeds this weekend. So, fans, let us know what do you think? How many goals will Leeds beat us by? And if you liked our podcast, of course, like, comment, share, subscribe. Let us know if you want us to keep doing these longer format. Let us know how you're liking our shorts as well. And until next time, thank you. Bye bye.